Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Facebook Live session with me. I'm Dr. Ari Yaris here at the Innovative Dad. I'm a licensed psychologist and a nationally certified school psychologist and a parent coach. And today we're going to be talking about a topic that our kids seem to face on a regular basis, which is stress. What to do about it, how to help them, and maybe even a little bit about what is stress. In fact, let's start there in terms of talking about what stress is, because we often make that statement, hey, I'm feeling a little stressed. What do we mean by that? So stress can come from a lot of places, and we're all affected, and we all react to stress in different ways. It's the way that our body responds to the demands that are being made upon us by the environment, our relationships, our perceptions and interpretations of those demands. There's good stress and there's bad stress. Good stress is the kind that, when you've got that last minute project to get done and you've just got that little bit of extra oomph coming out of you, that's good stress. It helps us develop effective coping strategies to deal with challenges and helps us become more resilient, which is something we really want to have happen. Bad stress is when our coping mechanisms are overwhelmed and we're unable to function with it. And one of the things we know is that the same kind of event can affect adults and children in different ways. What one person sees as a stressful event, another might not. For example, roller coasters. Myself personally, putting me on a roller coaster is an incredibly stressful event. I'm just not going to be a happy camper. My wife, on the other hand, is much more excited by that prospect. So same activity, different people, different reactions to the stressors that it's creating. The big pieces that we want when you're being faced with stress to be able to adapt, change, and then find methods that turn bad stress into good stress. All right. So let's talk a little bit, just really quickly, about the biopsychological elements of stress. And I promise I'm not going to delve too deeply into this, but I want to make it really clear that stress is something that is hardwired into us. Really clear physiological signs of stress can be an increased heart rate, increased in breathing, a decrease in digestive activity, that you're not going to feel as hungry, and that your liver is releasing some glucose for energy. Now, our body, or in particular, our brain, makes the decision about whether or not a situation is going to be stressful. Sensory input comes in, it gets processed, it gets compared to stored memories. This kind of happens sometimes very fast. And if the situation is judged by your brain to be stressful, then your hypothalamus kicks in, which is really down at the base of the brain, kind of close to the brainstem, coming up here in the back. And it's going to talk to two other structures, your pituitary gland and your adrenal medulla. And if you remember from general psychology, this is where that fight or flight response really kicks in terms of a short-term pathway. And then longer-term stress is managed by this hypothalamic pituitary adrenal system. Mixed into this is the release of adrenaline, a couple other hormones, cortisol, and essentially these are the different things that are triggering the biological response that I just talked about a minute ago, in terms of your sympathetic and your parasympathetic nervous system being activated. All right, so that's sort of the biophysical, biopsychological portion of it. But let's talk a little bit about some causes of stress for kids. I'm really bring this to talking about our children. So stressors can come, as I said, from a wide variety of places. Sort of big four categories that I would lump them into is you've got school, for example, an unstructured classroom, unclear expectations, a fear of failure. Home is another one of those buckets. If your family is lacking in some routines, if there's overscheduling, if somebody is ill in the family, changes in your family dynamics or family situation, overall financial problems, any of those things can contribute to stress for kids in the home. Then there's the peer-related component, dealing with a friend that's maybe not being as great a friend, or a problem with an acquaintance in school, or anything related to just general socialization, switching communities, switching peer groups. And then the last category that I would lump things into is is world news, or even just United States news, that kids who are exposed to images on TV, or are hearing in the car, and you're listening to the news at the top of the hour, may start to develop stress around worrying about their own safety or that of the people that they love. So something to think about in terms of stress, that it tends to be additive in nature. In other words, it's piling things on top of another. Think about it like a set of stacking cubes. And as that happens, children can then develop inappropriate behaviors, academic difficulties, or even health problems. Because, like I said at the beginning, stress is something that is a biopsychological process. So it's very likely that it can have an impact on your physical health, not just your mental health. Oftentimes, we as parents, when we realize that our child is in a stressful situation, we can kind of sort of do that Monday morning quarterbacking, that 20/20 hindsight, and see that there really is a building of stressful situations, one after the other, again, sort of that stacking cube set. All right, so some symptoms of stress in children. Let's run through these. Irritability or volatility in their emotions, going up and down all over the place. Sleep difficulty or nightmares, an inability to concentrate, drops in grades or other decreased functioning at school, toileting problems or eating concerns. So it could be frequently going to the bathroom, long periods of time in the bathroom, or major changes in the way that they're eating and addressing food. Headaches, stomach aches, unexplained fears or increased anxiety. You might see some clinging in younger children, and really them trying to stay on with you. Regression to earlier developmental levels. So an example of that would be adding some bedwetting. Self-isolation from either family activities or peer activities. And then in your adolescence, more likely drug or alcohol experimentation. And that really is an attempt to seek a way to ameliorate the stress and look for something that's going to make them feel better. All right, so some factors that might help prevent stress. These are the things that you as a parent can have some control over in terms of building up the resilience for your child, and trying to make it so that when a situation emerges and there are stressors in the environment, that they are less likely to really cause a serious problem. So that's things like positive problem solving and coping skills, and building those up. Having strong, supportive relationships at home and at school with peers and adults. Having clear expectations in their lives, vague expectations. I mean, if your boss tells you that a project is due, but they don't give you enough details, that's going to create stress for you, and it's really no different for our children. Creating an environment where children have permission and have the ability to learn from their mistakes is also really important. If they are constantly feared that they're going to fail in front of you, and that's something that you're not going to approve or accept, that is going to create additional stressors. So if you can create an environment where they're able to sort of fail forward, that can really go a long way. Of course, consistent positive discipline, overall just building some skills, some basic competencies, whether it's academic or social, extracurricular, general life skills, being able to say, okay, you know what, look, I really am great at math, or I'm good at reading, or I've got this great extracurricular activity, I really am a soccer star. Helping them build and express their feelings appropriately, really like building out that emotional vocabulary. If you take a look at the website, there's a great post there on building emotional vocabulary. You want to make sure that they feel physically and emotionally safe, that they've got access to having their basic wants and needs are being met, in particular needs. Think Maslow's hierarchy. When you're not having those lower levels, those basic needs of food and shelter being met, and then adding love on top of that at a higher level in that hierarchy, that's going to be preventative in terms of dealing with stress. Of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention good nutrition and exercise. If you're not eating well, if your body's not moving, you're going to have a harder time with stress. And then, of course, having some time to relax and do recreational activities. It really is no different for us than it is for our kids. We know that getting some time out, whether it's in front of the television or playing a game or going for a walk or a swim or what have you, is really buoys us up and helps us prepare for another day. All right. So let's get to some concrete strategies then that we can do as parents to sort of help with this. So you want to build trust with your child. Be available and be open to talk when your child is ready. So if your family circumstances are contributing to stress, be willing to answer questions openly, honestly. Encourage them to express their feelings, and then teach and model them good emotional responses. So they're not going to blow up as frequently over something if they don't ever see you reacting in that way. Let them know how you're feeling. Model the emotional response. Talk it out loud is a great way of doing that. So that, this way, when you reach that moment where you're seeing that your child is feeling overwhelmed, it's going to be much easier for you to encourage them to talk about it and to tell you when they're feeling that, because they're seeing you talking about your emotions. Encouraging healthy and diverse friendships. I've already mentioned this before, but physical activity, good nutrition, and rest. You may even need to schedule in relaxing activities, and certainly you need to be encouraging good sleep behaviors and paying attention to when those lights are off, and being really supportive with that. I can't say enough about the power of sleep. And how restorative and how much it can build up. And again, there's a great post on the website on that as well. Practicing relaxation exercises. I've got some of these up both on the website and on Facebook, some great exercises that you can do. And you can go back and take a look at an earlier Facebook Live session on mindfulness that talks about them some as well. Talking to your kids and teaching them how to actively problem solve and scaffolding that for them and modeling it. When we talk to our kids and they say, I can't do something, we use the phrase, how are you going to solve your problem? And really trying to empower them to move in that direction. All right. Another technique that you as a parent can do in terms of dealing with stress and helping your child with it is talking to them about anticipated family changes in an age-appropriate way and how that's going to impact them. So if your family is expecting another child, what is that going to mean? What's it going to look like? Talk through it. Take the time to process these things. If you've got a move coming up or a job change, well, what's that going to mean on the day-to-day? It's really important just not to hide the truth from your children. Children are incredibly naturally empathetic, and they're going to sense your worry. And in many cases, the unknown can be scarier than revealing the truth to them. And then be careful about where you're having adult conversations. If this is something that you're not ready to be transparent with your children about, whatever that level of transparency is, take it behind a closed door, have that conversation after the kids are asleep or out of the house. Particularly if you think it's something that's going to create additional anxiety for them. You want to help your child be part of the decision-making around things whenever possible. This is something that I talk about time and time again, that, if you can get your kid involved in meal planning, anything around the house is really, really great. And it's empowering, and it builds up the skills that they need to go and deal with stress. Remind your child about that they have the ability. Just reinforce the fact that you've gotten through a stressful situation in the past, and that I love you, and we're here to support you and work with you through this. We've got to mention media usage, whatever the screen is. Pay attention to the content, games, movies, internet, what have you. And if they're being exposed to things that could worry them more than it should. A trip to the library actually could also be something to move away from our screen-based media, maybe to some stuff that might be more encouraging of from a general parenting perspective. But there are a lot of really great books out there that have characters that are dealing with stressful situations. I think one of the great classics of that as Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day by Judith Viorst. And that book, the protagonist, Alexander, goes through a series of what for him are stressful situations. And there are plenty of other books out there that deal with that. For younger children, also the Franklin series is really great about talking about lots of different kinds of stressful situations for Franklin. All right. Use encouragement and natural consequences when poor decisions are being made, and make sure that you're talking about how the poor decision is connected to the consequences, and don't just talk about that at the end when the result has been yielded, so that let's say it's a situation where a child didn't get the homework done. You got to let them know at the front end, what the consequences are going to be around that not happening in terms of the conversation with the teacher and things like that. Pay attention to how you're scheduling your child. Don't overschedule them. Talk about the extracurricular activities that they're involved in, monitor their engagement with them, and give them permission to say, I want to end doing this. Now, you have to make a decision, in terms of a financial commitment around these activities, whether or not you're going to allow your child to drop out of an activity midway, or if that's even a behavior that you really want to encourage. I know Angela Duckworth talks about in her book, Grit, about not allowing her children to drop out of an activity midway, that they need to finish out the season or the series of lessons. And there's some great things you can think about in terms of that and building up your child's level of grit. But you want to not do that at the expense of creating a situation that's just entirely too stressful when they're just in over their head, perhaps with the number of extracurriculars that they're involved in. It probably goes without saying, but I'm going to mention this anyway, that you need to have conversations around the harmful effects of drug and alcohol before they begin experimenting, and don't necessarily rely on your child's school to be having those conversations. Have them at home. Also, pay attention to your stress level and how you're modeling coping stress, particularly when it comes to substance. If you're constantly making that comment that I need a drink to go deal with the fact that I've had a stressful day, that's then setting your children up for knowing that alcohol is an appropriate tool to use as a coping mechanism for when dealing with a stressful situation. So why shouldn't I sneak into the liquor cabinet and grab myself a shot of something? Lastly, know that when you're dealing with your child's stress, you're not alone. Loop in your child's educational team, their classroom teacher, school counselor, school psychologist, the administrator, and make them part of the team that you're using to assist. And of course, reach out to your physician, consider reaching out to a mental health professional if you see stress really becoming at a level where it is debilitating and that your child is not able to function. And I think that's the key piece in knowing when stress has gotten too much, that if it really is starting to interfere with the activities of daily living, that's a place where we want to red flag it and say, okay, I need additional help. All right, folks. So that's stress in children and adolescents, and some strategies there on how to deal with it, and things that we can do as parents to help our children build their sense of resilience and deal with the stressors that are out there. We'll have our next Facebook Live session in just 2 weeks on February 28th, and we'll be talking about reading and what can some of the things that we can do to encourage a positive attitude in our kids around reading and building that love of reading. And we'll talk a little bit about that and also some things to do to how to address when they're not falling in love with reading. As always, pay attention to the blog, www.ariyaris.com. I'm also on Instagram at @ariyaris, Twitter at enoparent. And the YouTube channel is up there as well. So lots of ways to connect with me via social media. Stay tuned for some short posts, short videos that you'll be seeing coming up with some really great simple strategies for you to work with your child on to help take these parenting strategies and turn them into kid habits. really key thing. We want to make sure that what we're doing as a parent is building lasting behaviors in our children. All right, folks, that's it for tonight. Thanks for tuning in. Happy parenting, and look forward to chatting with you soon. Take care.